I think the main reason why I decided to write this book is a sort of recording type thing. Like, why do people record history? It's in order for it to not repeat itself. Maybe he feels that by writing this down and sharing it with the world, it won't happen again because it's honestly one of the worst atrocities that we've encountered.
That it is, but do you really think that a book, why not any form of other media? Why a book, do you think, is the best form to convey these experiences then? Couldn't he, if he had done many other experiences and such? I'm sure later on we'll get into that more in depth, but is a book really the right choice?
Books are timeless, honestly. Like, we have writing back to ancient Mesopotamia, and what has lasted is what they've written down. Whereas this was going to last for a very long time. I mean, if we're engraved in stone, yeah, but it's something that people can keep having. If we do it in any sort of other form of technology, like, we have trouble reading 8-tracks now. We have trouble reading recorded tapes. So what would happen if we suddenly just, like, lost the device to read whatever it is recording, whereas we can just read words on a page. We don't need any sort of translation.
I can agree with that, except I can see how, in my opinion, books can also lose the literal meaning of what's behind it, like the words. Do you believe that by writing this down, then, eventually his original meaning could become alienated, or has it already? I mean, when you read something, you can take it several different ways, and especially something from experiences that have happened 60, 70 years ago. What do you believe that can it change?
I believe that the way, especially with his vernacular and the way that he drove somebody in, it was very powerful to me. I've read Holocaust stories before, and this is one that affected me very deeply. And not only, like, he wasn't incredibly graphic. I feel like that it was just the way that he phrased things. It was more powerful. You know what I mean? I was really disappointed.
I understand what you mean. It's just that I believe that over time the true meaning of the text can change, and I feel like in the past years the Holocaust, especially its experiences, have become more than just a retelling of what actually happened. In a way, it's almost been romanticized, and as dark and as cruel it is to say, I feel that we've almost turned it into a form of powerful and emotionally drenched entertainment rather than an expression of the experiences that actually happened, of which I don't believe Elie Wiesel's, that was not Elie Wiesel's intent at all when he wrote the book, but I feel like in today's age, some of that has begun to bleed through and start to show, especially in other modern works that depict the Holocaust.
I totally agree, and I totally agree that, I mean, honestly, people are going to bend whatever you do. We are obsessed with entertainment in this day and age, and so yes, we are going to take it and turn it into some sort of freak show. But, honestly, his book is not going to be the only thing that stands for the Holocaust. Auschwitz still stands. People can still go there and see the scratch marks in the gas chambers and know what's happened. I just feel like that it's a good supplement to these type of historical places.
As a supplement, I can agree, but I feel like hearing about the scratch marks and the screams and such can never equate to what actually occurred.
No, of course not.
Which, I mean, that I agree that a book is a good way to educate and inform, but it can never equate.
Of course not, no. I mean, but honestly, we can never know anything that has happened in history. We know of the Revolutionary War, and we know of the Constitution, but I've never seen the Constitution. To me, it could never exist. It's just part of that history thing. We can only get as close as we possibly can without actually being there and experiencing it. But no, we're never going to actually know exactly how it was.
I concur.
Cool. Are we done?
So I feel that his tone and how the way he writes and how it changes reflects his evolutionary experiences as he goes through the Holocaust. When he starts, he's very personal. He speaks a lot about his life at home and such, but then everything begins changing rapidly, just as suddenly as it changed for him in his life. And as he goes through, I feel that he loses the human element. At the very beginning of the novel, he was a very religious Jew. He did various, and of course, Jewish things that adhere to his beliefs. But then, as you continue to go on, it became less about the emotion and more about the physical actions that occurred. He was just retelling things how they were, because it's almost as if the Holocaust has almost beaten the human element out of you. You feel disjointed. You feel not worth it, to put it in a cruel fashion. Which is why I feel like as the tone progresses, he misses out on Yom Kippur. He misses out on his religious elements and such. When his father dies, there is an emotional element that we perceive, but if you look at it more closely, you can just see that it's just him retelling the facts. He's lost the will. He's lost feeling and emotion behind what he does. He is just writing down word for word exactly what has happened and allows the reader to take whatever they want from it.
Okay. I mean, you pretty much said everything that I was thinking. So this is going to be a very interesting discussion. But anyway, like, yeah, I totally agree. Especially, like I said earlier, with his vernacular. In the very beginning, you know, in my mind's eye, it was very colorful. There were a lot of colors. Like, I could see, you know, what the city streets would actually look like. But, you know, towards the end, it got super fuzzy. You know, in my mind's eye, it was harder to depict objects and places, and it was harder to, like, see things, per se, because his language and his descriptiveness dropped off so dramatically. And one of the main things that I think that he totally lost was a sense of time. Like, since he boarded the train, you don't know how much time has passed until suddenly he just said, I was 18. You know, he was 15 when he got off the train, and then suddenly all this crazy stuff happened, and then suddenly it was just, I was 18.
Which, if I may interrupt you just for a minute.
Go for it.
What I think that was is because he's trying to get across that every single day for the rest of his life was the same. It was the same cruelty, but just in a pattern. He wanted to retell what happened, and if the same thing happened every single day, there is not a need to express what happened between those times, which I feel like you were right in saying that the book isn't very chronologically based, but where I'm saying is it doesn't need to be.
Yeah, I see that. Also, I think it's more, instead of like the fact it doesn't need to be, as it is, he didn't really perceive time passing. He reduced himself down to such an animalistic state, is the only way to know how to put it, that he...
Inhuman,
exactly. That time really had no meaning for him. It was just, I get up and I do this, and then I go to bed. And then crazy stuff happens, and now I have to get up and go do this in another place. It's just monotonous.
Repetition, repetition, repetition.
And also, I think, especially in traumatic events, oftentimes people's memories are tarnished. Like, you don't remember the everyday, but usually you have better ability to remember things that are a little bit more happy. Whereas if something's seriously traumatic over a long period of time, your psyche is going to repress that because it was so impactful for you. So I think a lot of the reason why it was so disjointed towards the end is because he doesn't honestly remember very much that happened.
Which you can't blame him for all the experiences that have occurred. What is there to remember besides pain?
Exactly. Well, not much. But, I mean, you know, even really painful events, I don't know where I'm trying to go with this. Oh, let's back this train up. What was your question again?
I mean, like, when you're retelling historical events such as this, when there's things that all you can remember is pain, it takes a lot of mental just will and strength to be able to just express that in a way that he does. I mean, like, this man has gone through hell and back, and yet he's still willing to sit down and write out word for word his experiences.
Yeah, it's extraordinary. I don't know how he does it. Like, I mean, honestly, I've been through a couple traumatic experiences, and I don't like to remember them. Experiencing whatever he did, I would have died a long time ago.
Which I think that's a testament to Elie Wiesel's will and strength as a human being. He survived because he was the strong one.
It's a freaking Terminator. To put it super lightly, he's a Terminator.
Okay. If you so choose to put that in those words, I can respect it.
One of the biggest things that I am impacted by this interview is just, essentially I just feel sorrow. I feel an extreme sorrow because I cannot believe that humanity can fall so low. I'm an incredibly empathetic person, and so seeing these images and hearing like a lot of the words that he says, and it's just like I can't imagine why people would want to do that.
And anybody would be a fool for disagreeing with you. However, just focusing on Oprah Winfrey's portrayal of this event, I I don't think it adequately expresses how Elie Wiesel wished to talk about it. I feel like it's all emotion based. It's all meant to bring that empathy out in the individual. The music selection, the horrid pictures, the tone used by her during the entire show. But what I find interesting is how it all brings back to Elie Wiesel. He is sorrow. He is filled with sorrow. He is filled with mourning. But he speaks like a normal person throughout the entire interview. He, just like he does in his book, he expresses the facts. He expresses what he feels, but he doesn't bring it to an emotional level.
I disagree. He speaks with such a traumatic thing with almost no emotion. I can tell that he's been traumatized, obviously. Like, I mean, even if I didn't know that, I could tell by the tone of his voice. Because when people go through something that's so horrid, there gets to a point where the mind shuts down and you don't feel emotion. You just go through in a monotone. And he was most definitely in a shutdown state. You realize how quiet he got. And how he just said, yeah, that's the last place that I saw my mom and my sister. He didn't say anything else beyond that. There is no emotion to him. He's been wrung dry, essentially. And also, going back to the Oprah thing, this is how she does with everything. She is a warm and fuzzy. So, of course, if you're going to watch an Oprah interview, it's going to be emotionally gripping. It's supposed to be those things where you sit on the couch and drink a bottle of wine and cry.
But do you think that is the right way to go about it after how Elie Wiesel wrote the book?
You actually got me thinking. Good job. It's just, I feel like that he would have expected her to turn it into that. Everybody knows how Oprah operates.
Is that okay? That we look at the Holocaust like this, and we see it as an emotional, gut-wrenching thing that's supposed to make us feel that sorrow and that suffering. That Elie Wiesel, at the point that we've stopped, said that his point is not to make other people suffer, but to make others suffer less.
Yeah, and I understand that, but at the same time, sometimes you really can't get the dummies to listen, and I don't mean calling people stupid. But
humanity overall in general is pretty idiotic.
Sometimes, yes, but sometimes the only way to catch someone's attention is by having that emotional gripping. I mean, you look at
that
these...
pathos.
Yeah, the pathos. You need the pathos sometimes. People have been using it for thousands of years.
I just feel like the pathos in Oprah was stressed to a point that you didn't really get while reading Night.
Yeah, but I mean, if you think about it, it's TV. It was bound to happen. And I mean, not only that, but I don't think, yeah, people are going to watch Oprah's interview to have it stand alone, but any sort of thing from the Holocaust shouldn't really stand alone. If you really want to understand it truly, you should read the works, you should watch the memorials, you should go to these places and try to understand it as much as possible, not just scratch the surface with one facet.
Which I think that brings back to the original point that I made in question 1, where we were asking that whether the book was an appropriate medium to express this historical point. And I feel like, based on that books are timeless, do you feel that this is a short-term, adequate response to what people experienced during that time?
You talk about the book as a short term?
As the TV show as a long term, or a short term.
I believe so. Because people are more willing to watch TV than read books. But TV's not going to be around forever. We think it's going to be around forever, but it's not.
We should educate the masses.
Oh, always educate the masses. The masses need educating.
Ain't that the truth?